Welcome to another In Wheel Time podcast, a 30-minute mini version of the In Wheel Time car show that airs live every Saturday morning, 8 to 11 a.m. Central. It's the In Wheel Time car show, your weekly go-to all things automotive place. Howdy. Along with Mike out of this world, Mars, King Conrad DeLong, we need more Jeff Zekin.
We do.
I'm Don Armstrong. Glad you could join us. Right now we're going to go to a fellow that wrote an article that caught my attention. It's actually from Hagerty.com. And his name is Sajeev Mahta. And he wrote this article called 9 Tragically Flawed GM Vehicles Whose Heroic Fixes Came Too Late. I love it. I read the article. I loved the research that you did on this. Good morning to you, sir, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Good morning, Don. Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Thanks so much for joining us. Hey, listen, I don't know who came up with this, but this is brilliant because, you know, I have a feeling that GM didn't go in to create a vehicle that was badly flawed, but they certainly wound up with them. All I can think of is the Aztec. Remember the Aztec, the Pontiac Aztec? Oh, it probably to this day, one of the ugliest vehicles ever.
I was there at General Motors while a lot of this was going on, and
so you could relate.
So it's your fault, Conrad's fault.
But they did make a lot of corrections. You know, your opening car, the Cadillac Elante, what a abomination that was with the 4.1 and 4.5 liter engine in it. They finally stick the North Star in it for the last year of production. And the North Star engine in that car was actually quite sweet. But Cadillac had this whole thing about guaranteed value compared to the Mercedes SL 500 and horse hockey. It never held its value.
Sajeev, tell us, how did you come up with these and tell us all the research that you did.
Well, it's actually something that I've always thought about in the back of my head, and every day I have a Zoom call, much like I'm having with you guys, with my counterparts at Hagerty, because I'm here in Houston with you guys, and Hagerty is predominantly in Michigan. So we always brainstorm ideas here and there, and I just blurted it out one time how GM made some really great cars. I mean, they've made Aztecs, which are, you know...
ugly.
You can't fix an Aztec without a flamethrower. You know, or
we're going to use that
chassis. But you know, they put a lot of effort into some really good cars, but it wasn't enough. And then when they and I mentioned there are a couple that they did a Hail Mary at the cut 10 seconds before the game was over. They did a Hail Mary and they did it, but they still lost the game
and made a very nice car after it was in production 3 or 4 years, and it already had a stained reputation.
Yeah, I mean, it was already stained. And, I mean, let's be honest, especially for people who are used to rear-wheel drive vehicles, front-wheel drive Cadillacs were never really gonna bowl people over. And so the Elante had a lot of headwinds against it because most people who like luxury cars like rear-wheel drive. But, you know, that 93 model, I drove one when it was new. I mean, I was a little kid. I was a kid, but and, you know, that was impressive as a kid, but I mean, it was an impressive car. And so then I just kind of looked and remembered some other cars. This was all just in my head saying, okay, remember the Fiero? I was like, wait a second. In 1988, they had the Fiero GT and the Fiero Formula. And I'm like, wait a second, that was a 1-year only car.
Great choice, by the way. Great choice.
Yeah. And that was a phenomenal car. The 1988 car could not come as is back in 81 or 82, the first year of the Fiero, but they could have put the brakes and suspension on it, and it could have been a heck of a car back then.
Except they were busy using Chevette and Chevy Cavalier parts.
Well, they had those left over. Those are on the shelf.
Well, that was the point of it. Yeah. But I always thought one of the other downfalls of the Fiero to have finished the package would have been to put the quad 4 in it. And then it would have had a high-performance 4-cylinder in it, which that car was basically built for a 4-cylinder. But after they did all the suspension modifications and stuff that you talk about in the article, that was a fine little car.
Yeah, and I wonder, it's funny you mentioned the quad 4 because I was kind of thinking about that too, but it would be beyond the scope of what I was writing here. But, you know, that was an Oldsmobile engine.
Yep.
And even in the 80s, those manufacturers, those divisions were not too keen on sharing engines sometimes. The North Star wasn't shared with anyone until Oldsmobile in the a few years later.
Right.
You couldn't get a North Star in a Chevrolet.
No, never could.
Yeah, so what were the odds back in 1982 or whenever Oldsmobile was making that quad 4? What were the odds Oldsmobile would say, no, you're never getting it for your Fiero?
Well, and they eventually did share it through Pontiac and Buick. You can get the quad 4s, and there was actually some Chevys you can get it in as well. But beside the point, I thought Fiero was another great choice. And then the short life of the CT6 and the CT6 Blackwing, which was the beast. But, just kind of the wrong choice. They're selling this $100,000 car with just the flat-out wrong engine in it.
Yeah. Well, I got one for you. How about the SSR? It had no engine in it.
Well, it had the LS1 to start with, and then they went with the LS3.
It was horrible. It was horrible. It had absolutely no horsepower.
Just heavy.
Right. And here's another. I'm sorry.
It needed the LS1 from the start. It didn't have a 5.7. It had the 5.3 from a Chevy truck.
Right.
So it drove like a truck, but looked sort of like a sports car. But that was a cool looking vehicle, but it had a truck powertrain because it was a Chevy Trailblazer.
Exactly.
And once they put the LS3 in it, which that didn't exist when it first came out, but if they put the Camaro's LS1 and 6-speed in it from the get-go, that would have been a pretty cool vehicle.
Right. Would have been a totally different vehicle.
Well, and another engine flop, I think, was it the H2 or the H3 that had that horrible 5-cylinder engine in it that had no power for a vehicle that weighed 10 million pounds?
It was the H3.
Yeah. Oh, my God. It was just horrible.
But again, that's the same as the HHR. That was the H3 was a Chevy Trailblazer shared platform that they stuck the Hummer body on it. That inline 5-cylinder was anemic, to say the least.
Yeah. So what else did you come up with?
So let's see. I remember I put in because I wanted to get more than just 3 or 4. I really dug into GM's history, and most of it's just available online. And I have a couple of books here behind me. In my collection, in my personal collection of stuff. And when General Motors was turning into General Motors, before the Model T times or, during the Model T times, it's pretty interesting what they were trying to do as far as segmenting the market, the car market back then. But the car market during the Hoover era was probably not as well known as it is now or in the past 50 years. It was hard. So they made, Chevrolet made a high-end car with an overhead valve engine called the Series D, and that was a little too much like a Buick. So when Chevrolet got sucked into General Motors axed that car, even though that was probably a great vehicle. It was only in production for 2 years, but, it was one of those things where it was probably too good to be a Chevrolet, but so they just had and they had other vehicles there.
And Chevrolet had the V8 before Ford had the flathead V8 out by almost a decade.
Yeah, and then they killed it.
Amazing.
And then the EV1, or what internally was called the Impact, which I always thought was just a poor name for a car. But you talked about the EV1, their first foray into electric vehicles as well.
Yeah, and that was, because the EV1 was a compliance car, but the more you look into it, it wasn't just made to keep the government happy or to get some fundage coming through. They had plans for it. I mean, they could have pushed out a little further, and the mere fact that they upgraded it from lead acid batteries, like what all gasoline cars have, to a to a nickel metal hydride. Which is a battery that was really hot 25 years ago. They upgraded it, and that immediately improved the range. And, it just shows that it was well on its way to becoming like a Tesla. I mean, it was a premium vehicle. It was sold at Saturn dealers, if I remember my history correctly. So it was not sold with your average, $8,000 Cavalier. It was sold at a premium dealership. It was more of a Tesla experience.
Well, one of the unique things about the EV1 was it was never sold. They were only leased.
They were leased.
So I think GM had planned for failure. because they wanted to collect all of them at the end of the lease for whatever they wanted to do with them. There's still a few of them out there. I know Jay Leno has one. But I always thought that was odd, like they were planning on that to be a flop. They never sold it. It was only a lease car.
Weird. Very strange.
Well, maybe that's the next article for you, is to do all the electrics.
There's a history of them.
I mean, we're getting enough of those now, so yeah.
And then finally, one of my favorites was the Oldsmobile Intrigue. I love that car. I thought that was a great car.
Very underrated car. No one talks about it, and I mean, it's a family sedan, but everyone talks about Camrys or Tauruses or Impalas or whatever. But yeah, it was the best of the bunch, but it got none of the stuff. And I'm not saying that a front-wheel drive 300 horsepower LS series engine is a great performance car, because when you drive it, it's still a front-wheel drive car with torque steer. But it was cool in its own right, and the mere fact that the Intrigue didn't get it was sad. But it was sad because Oldsmobile ceased to exist before that powertrain came out.
Right.
And my wife had an Achieva.
Yep. Well, and that was an ugly car. I'm sorry.
She hated it.
But the Intrigue, the unique thing about it was it had a V6 derived from the Oldsmobile Aurora V8, and it was an exclusive to Oldsmobile. The Oldsmobile was the only one with that engine in it, which may have led to its demise as well.
Well, the Aurora was nice.
The Aurora was a nice car, but it had its flaws. But again, great article. I love the way that you encompassed not just the recent ones, but you actually went back in time to look at some of the other flops of GM, because I learned something reading this. I did not realize that the Viking was a GM product.
Yeah, I had forgotten about that. It's one of those things where you hear it mentioned, or you read it in a book years ago, and it didn't stick for me. But then I went back and looked, and I was like, oh yeah, they had, because I can't remember if it was the GM C body or B body. It was probably the B body, because they made that from like 1928 up until the 1996 Impala Roadmaster, etc. I mean, different chassis, same name. And so they said, hey, we have this body. Let's just make different cars off of it and see if it, let's throw stuff on the wall and see what sticks. And there's nothing wrong with that, especially in the 20s. I mean, you're inventing things. You're kind of like the way Tesla is now. You're just creating things to see what's going to happen. I thought it was pretty fascinating. And I mean, my intent with this article was to educate and to not to throw barbs at General Motors, or not to throw barbs intentionally, because a lot of manufacturers make these mistakes. I mean, it's like saying, Ford should have put the Taurus SHO engine in a mid-engine car. I mean, they didn't do it, even though they had plans for it.
Or Chrysler should have put the Hemi in the Prowler. You can always look back on what could have, should have been, and then you just depend on the custom car builders
to do it for you. All the hot rodders are doing that now.
Yeah, and that's what now those Prowlers are great with. I mean, a lot of them are putting LS motors, which upsets the Mopar purist, but at the end of the day, a rear-wheel drive V6 can't really hold a candle to a rear drive V8.
So what's next in your article portfolio here? What can we expect?
What can we look forward to?
Right.
I literally just finished, and it got published yesterday, if I remember correctly, an article comparing the Toyota Crown flagships, the ones that we never saw because they were popular in Japan, a good 15 years after the war. Or maybe 20, 25 years after the war. And I compared those to the Cadillacs of the era. So you can go to Hagerty.com/media for that right now. And so, yeah, the tank is kind of empty right now. I need to think of something else and come up with another one, because I thoroughly love doing this. And it, if I can find a notion with enough meat on it, I can probably come up with something interesting like this.
You need to come to one of our car shows that we attend. We've got We got the next one is Tailpipes and Tacos on the 18th
out in Katy. Or
one that I think that you'd really enjoy is Woody's Waterfront Car Show that we're going to be at next month. Then that draws a lot of different cars from all over the state of Texas. I think you'd really enjoy that.
Whereabouts are you in Houston?
Whereabouts are you in Houston?
I'm in Spring Branch. I'm pretty central.
Yep. Okay. Very good.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, we hope to run into you and see you soon. And hey, next article, give us a shout. Let us know what you got. Let's talk about it.
Will do. Thank you all.
Thank you, man. It's great talking to you.
Yeah,
Sajeev Mahta with the Hagerty article.
Great article.
Great
article.
Yeah, I thought so too. All right, I got a couple of stories making headlines this week I want to get in before we close out this week's show. Workers at 3 Ford Motor Company assembly plants in North America will face some level of downtime next week because of semiconductor-related part shortages, including both factories that make the best-selling F-150.
That's the queso plant and the salsa plant because they ain't got no chips.
No wonder we go over.
Yeah, exactly. Ford's been hit especially hard by the chip crisis, although the company plans to work through most of some 60 to 70,000 unfinished vehicles
Still sitting out there.
that are sitting in lots around assembly plants by the end of the third quarter.
Collecting moisture, gas going bad in the tank.
Flat
spotting tires.
Japan's Rome company says that vital semiconductors for automobiles and industrial machinery will likely remain in short supply at least throughout next year.
Ooh.
Adding to ominous warnings about further fallout from the global chip crisis. The Kyoto-based chip maker, whose customers include Toyota, Ford, and Honda, has been hampered by a severe shortage of key materials as well as full production lines, according to its CEO. The company started beefing up its capacity last September and plans to spend another $636 million in the current fiscal year. But the full contribution for such investments won't be seen immediately because production machinery is taking longer to arrive. Chip delivery times have already surpassed 20 weeks as the COVID-19 Delta variant complicates efforts to resume normal operations from Japan to Southeast Asia. Ugly, ugly, ugly.
Very ugly.
Yeah.
And it's uglier than the Pontiac Aztec.
There's nothing uglier than
Yeah, I
that.
was going to say, you got to go.
A Pontiac Aztec with the camper back on it. Remember they had the camper back on it?
Give it a break.
Honda is warning U.S. dealers that vehicle deliveries to retailers could fall by 40% in the coming weeks compared with previous estimates.
Go out and buy one now.
Due to part supply problems out of Asia, according to a letter sent to retailers. The letter, which was confirmed by a dealer who expressed disappointment over the cut, said the resurgence of the coronavirus in Southeast Asia had converged with already tight microchip supplies to impact Honda production more than had been expected.
Yikes.
I know.
Wow.
And you know, you put those two things together. And remember, we had the guy that made the stuff that goes in microchips on just a few weeks ago.
Right. The materials, the metals.
Yes. And between the lack of parts or supplies and the coronavirus and capacity
and transportation of raw material,
all of that, it's turned into an absolute nightmare.
and people sitting on their butt collecting unemployment checks instead of going out and going to work.
Making chips.
Making chips in salsa.
I don't know about you, but I like working.
I like working.
Working is good.
Because what is the alternative? Not working. Well, what am I going to do? Sit around all day and look at myself?
Eat bonbons.
And chips and salsa?
bonbons.
Chips and salsa.
Chips and salsa. Lots of chips and salsa and margaritas.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds like fun.
Strawberry frozen.
Sounds like what you do every Friday night.
Have you had any liquor lately?
I'm married.
So
he has a lot of liquor. Well, here's your first shot right there.
There you go.
Some Canadian whiskey.
Okay. It's the hair of the dog that bit you.
I'm doing it.
So we have got remote broadcasts coming up. I want to remind everybody also that if you're into Houston Motorsports Park and Gina Child-Knowles racing thing out there, the September 4th race has been postponed until October. So keep that in mind, and we'll let you know when the date is. The reason being is because of COVID. Apparently, several of the racers have COVID. So,
Ouch.
Wow.
That's not good.
No, it's not. So at any rate, there's that.
Knock on wood, none of us here have had that.
Knock on wood. Well, I had my shots.
Yep. Distemper and...
He's got the dog tags.
He's been wormed as well.
wormed. Did you see that story? Where people are taking horse pills for deworming to stave off COVID.
Is that what they're taking it for?
Yeah.
I saw.
Well,
people
it's designed for deworming.
Who are these stupid people?
It's designed for horses and livestock,
Yeah.
not humans. But they're doing it to, like he said,
the medical community has also now come out and said everything that was said about hydrochloroquine,
that stuff.
is true.
Queen.
Yeah, I mean, it's good for you.
And it will stave off the coronavirus. It won't stop it, but so
I don't think that's official, but
Tune in next week for an appendix operation.
Yes.
By Jeff and his Swiss Army knife.
In my home shop. Live.
Hey.
Remote.
Hey. If the part comes in, we've got a date next weekend to install a Hurst shifter.
I hope I'm sober.
A Hurst shifter. Well, you certainly won't be after we get done.
Oh, hell yeah.
Well, we want to kind of give a shout out to Sean Rich at Garages of Texas out there in Katy.
Yep.
They had their
cool.
They had their event today.
Nice
and
work,
I think
Sean.
That's winding down, and that's Garages and Gearheads.
Yep.
So I know Sean was following
He
us
needs
today. He
to
was online with
send
us.
Mike some photos so we can post those.
One of the other things I thought was hilarious, Gary Emmons is kind of connected with me a little bit, and he sent me an article about a 23-year-old Toyota Tacoma pickup truck with a manual transmission.
All right.
And, we were talking to him about used car pricing and stuff. He said they went nuts on this car. 23 years old, 64,000 miles, and it goes through an auction, and they paid $17,000 for it.
What?
Are you kidding me?
And the guy who bought it wrote the article. I'm laughing hysterically, and then I go back and I read the top, and I texted back to Gary. I says, "You didn't write the article, did you?" And he goes, "No." But how crazy is that? And last time they were on, he was talking about how the values are starting to drop again.
A little bit, yeah.
At $17,000 for a 23-year-old.
So imagine if that was in a high value.
I'm thinking my mom's 2002 Honda Odyssey with 85,000 miles on it. I may need to take better care of it.
Yeah,
pull the chips
you
out of
better
it.
head. We'll be right back.
Houstonian-owned Bayway Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram has the most sought-after models in the Houston area today. When you're in the market for a new or used vehicle, you now have a place to go. General Manager Lincoln Stahl guarantees Bayway will beat any competitor's written price on the new vehicle you choose or pay you $1,000. Bayway Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram is easy to get to on Highway 225 near Beltway 8 in Pasadena. Whether it's online or in person, you're welcome like one of the family. Bayway Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram.com. Tailpipes and Tacos, Houston's premier monthly car cruise-in, returns Saturday, September 18th at 2 Loopy Tortilla Mexican restaurants in Katy and inside the Loop on the Southwest Freeway near Kirby. Tailpipes and Tacos is free and everyone's invited.